Well, right after that, you see, he pulled up stakes, mom and dad. He had the greatest parents you ever want to be. His mom was a stitch a day. Boy, I'll tell you what, she could come up with some stuff. But they pulled up stakes and moved to California. But of all the places in sunny California that you would want to move to, Bakersfield is not the place. Rick grew up in Bakersfield, and if you've ever been to Bakersfield, they got a lot of sand. And they got a lot of sand. And on top of that, they got a lot of sand. So he spent a lot of time in the dirt, which a lot of us have. Anyway, he spent a lot of time in the dirt, motorcycles, dune buggies, anything that had an engine in it, he did it and he won with it. And then pretty soon somebody said to him, hey, did you ever think about going on to doing something on asphalt? And Rick, being Rick, said, yeah, let's try it. Well, he got into Super V's and actually won a bunch of races and then a championship. And while he was doing that, there's a guy out there that we both liked and knew for a long time, Bill Simpson. He kind of engineered a ride for Rick in an Indy car. And that was the beginning of it all. They took it to Ontario Motor Speedway and ran it. And I guess it was like, this is what I really want to do kind of thing. And it wasn't too much longer. He went on a motorcycle ride. He was up in the mountains and ran into this guy by the name of Roger Penske, who was, believe it or not, riding a motorcycle. And they got talking one day, and Rick told him that he was really interested in doing some IndyCar racing. And Roger said, you know, let me think about that. Well, at the time, you gotta just think back, or I do anyway, because I remember all the things that were going on at that particular juncture. At the time, we had two pretty good drivers, Mario Andretti and Tom Sneva. They were passable. And Roger said, you know, we're gonna get Rick Mears to get in our new car, and we'll develop it with Rick, and we'll let him do the races that Mario can't do, because Mario was doing Formula One at the time. So that was Rick's introduction. He came in, and believe it or not, 1978 was a pretty good year. He won a couple of races. 1979 came and he won a couple more, and then we went to Indy. And I can tell you this, there was a lot of conversation, especially in the press, because, you know, that was the year that all the ground effects cars came out. And we had a car at the time, was a PC7, and Bobby Unser had done most of the testing on it. And I guess Roger, from what Rick tells me, actually asked him, do you want to run the PC7 or the PC6? It's your choice. And Rick had spent the previous year running the PC6 on and off, and he said, I think I'll take the PC6. That's the PC6. The PC6 was the last flat bottom car to ever win at Indy. It was a year old when he got in that car, and the press just could not believe he was going to turn his back on this new car. But Rick had a lot of time in that other car. He did a lot of the development, even in England. So when he got in it, he knew the car, and he drove it like nobody I ever seen do it before. He smoked everybody, won the race, and that was the beginning of a dynasty, Penske and Mears. So along came 1984, 1984, Rick won again. And it was like, this was magic. Until late in the season, we went to Canada, San Air, and Rick had a terrible wreck. He hit the guardrail, his feet went under the guardrail, broke both of his feet. I mean, really broke his feet. And you know, there were people that said he'd never walk again, much less drive a race car. But he had good doctors, he moved on. And I'll tell you what, it was sad because I could see how much pain he was in, and I could relate to that. Well, Rick went on to win again in '88 and again in '91. And in his career, which spanned 14 years, he won 29 races. He won at Indy 4 times, sat on the pole 6 times. He's one of those guys that you read about, probably never see, because he doesn't ever seek any real adulation. He just does it because that's what he was born to do, drive an Indy car. So he joined A.J. Foyt, Unser, Rick Mears, and Castor Nevis, the only guys that ever won Indy 4 times. And I look around in here tonight and I see several of our old IndyCar teammates, including Tim. But these guys can tell you, this is the man. When they say, who is the best IndyCar guy ever? Well, you're looking at him right there.
Thank you very much, Don. I don't know where to start, but one thing real quick, Doug. I did go so fast one time that I couldn't turn, and it didn't work out at all. I still feel it. But no, I just want to thank everybody for being here and coming out tonight. It's a great event, and it's great to see some familiar faces and being close to home here with Team Penske, and it's just a great opportunity for me. I know Don was talking about Roger and I getting together, and back in the early days when I started, it was, you know, we started playing with dune buggies over at the coast, or I was actually on motorcycles. Mom was afraid I was going to get hurt on a motorcycle, so she wanted to get me in something with a roll cage and a seatbelt. So we'd start playing with these dune buggies over at the coast, and Dad heard about them racing down at Ascot Park in LA, so we went down and watched them run one night, and on the way home, and this was Mom's idea, I didn't know it at the time. On the way home, Dad says, "What do you think about racing one of those?" I said, "Oh, that'd be great." I didn't think it would ever happen. He said, "We'll make you a deal. You give up racing motorcycles, we'll build one." Because we had most of the stuff to put one together. So I said, okay, and here that was Mom's idea. But I don't think she realized it was leading to 200-mile-an-hour cars, or she may have changed her mind. So. But I got to thank Mom for getting me that opportunity. But even back then, I never dreamed of racing for a living. Never dreamed of going to IndyCar. First of all, I never thought I'd be racing anything like that. It's just what we did for family recreation on the weekends. We'd work during the week to make the means to go play on the weekend, and it just started snowballing and taking its own course. And I actually never thought about getting into an IndyCar until about 6 months before it actually took place, and that was the ride with Simpson that Don was talking about. And so when I did get that opportunity, and obviously I just loved driving anything I could get in. It didn't really matter. But we started running a few races, and the team decided to get out of the business. And I remember we tried to qualify at Indy the first year, which was 77, and didn't make the show. I missed it by about a mile an hour. And I remember sitting on the wall trying to console myself, thinking, well, maybe next year I'll be able to have another year's experience under my belt, and maybe a little bit newer equipment. And little did I know the next year it was going to be coming back with the best team in the business with Penske. So, first of all, I never dreamed of getting into an Indy car. Then once I got into an Indy car, I never dreamed of driving for Roger. That was way out of my league, I felt. So things just happened very quickly and came together, and through a lot of help from a lot of people to make it all happen. And I was just kind of along for the ride and in the right place, right time. But, you know, I've never really thought that much about it, but Don was talking about not talking about it. I have realized in these later years, you know, the older I get, the better I was. And I'm starting to talk more about myself. I've gained a lot of ground in the last few years. I've gotten a lot better. But anyway, I just want to, I'll keep it short. I just want to thank everybody for being out here, and thank the mayor and Mooresville and you know, and just everybody involved behind the scenes that's taking, you know, made all this stuff happen. And the Hall of Fame, it's just great. Again, another one of those things I never dreamed happening, and this is just more icing on the cake. So thanks again for being here, everybody. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being
When I came across that, I went,
Okay.
pleasure. Congratulations. Thank you.